Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets. I think the Denver Nuggets are one of the most interesting teams in the NBA because they play in a style that I think is very counterintuitive to what most NBA teams are gravitating towards, and yet I think they have the single best player in the NBA. We're going to discuss why it kind of works for them, why they struggle with it sometimes, and what their overall philosophy is. Let's go. The first thing we have to establish is that Denver essentially, they run through two players. They run through Jamal Murray and they run through Nikola Jokic. Of the examples we're going to take a look at today, we're going to see just such a high workload from these two players in particular. We're starting off with Jamal Murray, and we can see him shooting, for the three was the first shot, but we can see him shooting a lot of mid-range shots here coming up. And the reason that they're going to go to this quite often is simply because this is the most efficient shot that they're willing to get in this situation. I think if you ask Mike Malone what the ideal shot each possession would be, it'd be Nikola Jokic having the ball in the middle with somewhere to pass it. However, one of the big issues that Denver runs into on a regular basis is that there's such a steep drop-off in skill after Jamal Murray, frankly. And there's such a steep drop-off in shooting once you get after Michael Porter Jr. and maybe Julian Strawther. Julian Strawther is still kind of up in the air a little bit. And so the reason we're seeing so many of these isolation or essentially one-on-one attacks with Jamal Murray in this game is simply because the Denver Nuggets are willing to concede they're not going to get the ideal situation, so they're taking the next best thing, which is having a good shooter one-on-one with space. And so Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic do such an amazing job of burdening a huge load and still staying efficient that it's understated for sure the abilities they possess. If we briefly take a look at points throughout the season, we can see that Jokic first off is carrying a huge load, but then Jamal Murray is second, and then Michael Porter Jr. is also their 3-point specialist, and then after that it's a massive drop-off. It's why one of the key things is that Jamal Murray simply and Nikola Jokic have to be unbelievably efficient in their attacks, or else Denver is going to struggle a lot. And so one of the big overarching concepts I'm going to talk about is how Denver Nuggets shoot the single lowest percent of three-pointers, as far as their relative shots. So they shoot way less threes than they shoot twos across the average for the league. 34% is way below 36%, and it's way below the average, let alone the highest of 53%. And so then the question is, why are they so anti what you would call modern small ball, where they shoot lots of threes, space the floor? And the reason is because they believe they get more efficient shots with Jokic one-on-one and with Jamal Murray one-on-one. Now, whether that's a commentary more on the rest of Denver's staff, or whether that's a commentary on how good Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic is, that's your decision. But one of the big things is Nikola Jokic is shooting a lot more threes this year. If we look at him by year and we see simply three-pointers attempted, we can see that he is over 1.4 three-pointers per game that he shoots, and it's at a much higher percentage than last year. The reason this is crucial is because, as I talked about, I think I was on my other channel, is one of the big things the Timberwolves did is they would sag off like we kind of just saw right there. So if we go back and look at this, we see when this switch happens, they're not really concerned about really closing out aggressively to Nikola Jokic. They're like, if he wants to shoot that, we're going to allow it for right now, but we're going to be kind of passive and make sure Jamal Murray doesn't have an open shot. And so one of the things Nikola Jokic has had to change about his game is he has to be far more assertive as an individual. And Denver is unbelievably blessed that he has the ability to do that, because I think Denver would be a huge amount worse, frankly, if they didn't have Nikola Jokic. And so because Denver doesn't have a stereotypical balanced offense where you see shooter space in the floor, lots of driving lanes where you can attack downhill, they have to try and manufacture points in different ways. So one of those is by giving isolation to Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, letting them work one-on-one. The other way is by attacking in transition every single opportunity they get, and they do have athletic players like Christian Braun, who is very athletic getting downhill 100%. And because you have such good outlet passes from Nikola as well, it gives them an added bonus of offensive players being able to leak out early aggressively and try and attack before the defense is even set, which gives Denver an advantage. And so if we look over here, again, sorting for fast break points right here, we can see that Denver Nuggets are second in total percentage of their points coming from fast break points because they want to push, because they know that's where they can manufacture an advantage. So again, we're seeing every single opportunity that Denver gets to look ahead, especially to Jamal Murray, they're going to give that opportunity to try and create open looks as much as they can. But then the two real bread and butter ways that the Denver Nuggets go to try and essentially get Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic good looks are, one, Jokic posting up, and two, pick and roll. We're going to talk about the posting up first. So first off, we can see that there's a reason the Mavs are okay with their post player guarding Christian Braun. Like, that's so he can provide help for Nikola Jokic. They are okay with that switch because they know they can provide help. These other players are also able to help off of Russell Westbrook, but you have to stay attached to Michael Porter and Jamal Murray. Those are important for the way the offense runs. So instantly, okay, likely does not even pretend like he's going to guard Christian Braun on the perimeter. And the real issue here is that Christian Braun doesn't believe, and or the coaching staff doesn't believe, that he's a good enough shooter to stay there and shoot that ball. His first thought is to cut, even though that's a simple pass out, would be a simple pass out. And so because his first thought is to cut, that makes it so essentially the defense has to react slightly. And so the big difference is, I think this was very poor defense from Dallas Mavericks in particular. In particular, we're watching 13 right here. I think PJ Washington does the right thing, stepping up, taking the cutter. So then in 13 is the one making the decisions here. And so his choices are Jamal Murray, he can stay home on, or Russell Westbrook, he can close out to. And I think the slight gamble there to try and anticipate Russell Westbrook, I'm certain Nikola Jokic was looking him off, but that seems like a pretty big mistake in my eyes. Hey, Jamal Murray doesn't shoot the first shot, does the flyby, but you can see Klay Thompson literally isn't even guarding Russell Westbrook out there, isn't even looking to close out, and so that leads to an open shot for Jamal Murray. Then I think an even better example of the lack of shooting for Denver is, first off, when Nikola gets this ball down here on the post, what do we see? We see literally 3 defenders on him because they don't feel like they need to guard anyone. So the big question I have for Denver, like in this, is why is Michael Porter Jr. cutting? I get it why Brown is cutting. I get it why this offensive player is cutting. Why is Michael Porter cutting? He needs to be one of the ones that space the floor at you with like Jamal Murray is. Okay, so as Nikola turns to see the floor, we can see that the Mavs literally have 5 players on the paint. Like this is the extreme example of the lack of spacing that Denver uses and kind of intentionally plays by, as well as they're forced to a little bit. However, Nikola Jokic, literally being one of a kind, is able to find Jamal Murray even if it gets deflected, and it leads to an open shot for him on the perimeter. And then the second way that Denver actually tries to manufacture spacing, even though it's not like it's artificial spacing, like you see Golden State do this with Gary Payton, where he doesn't actually command respect, so you have to kind of create the respect for him. And so Russell Westbrook essentially sets the little flare screen right here, and this is difficult for the defense because you usually don't want to stay super attached to a shooter if he's 2 passes away is kind of the logic behind it. And so setting a flare screen like this does put quite a bit of pressure on the defense if you can set a good screen, and Klay Thompson's not ready to switch if they were trying to switch. And the other key player for this that does a similar thing is Michael Porter Jr., and that's why I think Michael Porter Jr. is so crucial for Denver. And he struggled shooting, I think, for a period of, or no, he was the only one that didn't struggle shooting for a period of time against the Timberwolves last year. And I think it's so crucial for him to be essentially shooting well when Denver gets to the playoffs. So Nikola Jokic sets a screen right here, and this creates artificial spacing because you're worried about him coming off the screen, even though he's a couple passes away. And Russell Westbrook's screen, you have to stay attached, obviously, because he's going downhill. And so that creates an open look for Michael Porter. And so when I was showing you clips earlier of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic having essentially their load, I was showing you quite a few clips of a ball screen being used to give Jamal Murray essentially one-on-one. But I just wanted to highlight it. This is the other thing that they go to besides the Nikola Jokic post-up, frankly, to try and get their 2 best players involved in opportunities whenever they can. So one of the big things is here, Nikola Jokic going downhill is obviously the threat. And I think it's crucial that they have Michael Porter over here in the corner because he's the one that can shoot. He's the one that's going to be their very good shooter on high volume. So as Nikola heads down, that puts Klay Thompson in a tough spot. Does he stay with Nikola? Does he guard Michael Porter Jr.? And Jamal Murray does a good job finding where the open pass is and putting in a good spot where Michael Porter is able to rise up and shoot double. And one of the other ways they try and manufacture spacing is with a pick and roll, but they kind of switch it between Jokic and Jamal Murray. And this makes it so it puts the other defender, especially 5, in a difficult situation, because if the big gets caught on the screen, the defender gets caught on the screen. Does he stay on the perimeter? Does he stay with Jamal Murray because Jamal Murray is a good shooter? It's a difficult situation, and it gives Jamal Murray opportunities to work in space. Really don't like the leaving your feet right there, but Jamal Murray is able to create because of that initial ball screen. All right, again, we're looking for Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic. I'm not entirely sure what Watson's doing right here. It seems highly unlikely that this is what Denver had drawn up, but he's able to cut essentially. And so Jamal Murray sets a little screen right here, and that works perfectly because Jamal Murray is going to immediately flow into what would be a ball screen, or 5 was worried about it being a ball screen. So he back cuts into space. And because, again, you have your 2 best players working in essentially the middle third of the court, it gives you opportunities to have one of them be taking a shot and or creating the offense for your team. So then the real big question is, in Denver, in lineups like this, how are they going to maintain efficiency? Are they going to maintain efficiency? We can see they run the same basic concept, but the defense essentially sags off. You can see that's not a hard closeout. He's not worried about him shooting in particular, puts a hand up late, and he airballs. However, DeAndre Jordan is able to get the rebound here. So if Denver can maintain efficiency through any kind of artificial means, that at least bodes semi-well for them. And again, we're going to see the exact same concept. First off, when I say we have no spacing on the floor, or their bad lineup, no Michael Porter Jr., no Nikola, no Jamal. And so that's not great. You have no spacing whatsoever. Russell Westbrook cuts to the middle, and it's probably not a shot you want him taking. Again, DeAndre Jordan does get a rebound because he's the biggest man in there. So good for him. However, I don't know if you can bank on him getting that rebound constantly. And so one of the big things that concerns me a huge amount is when you have the not great spacing lineup, and Jamal Murray joins them. He's essentially the one player that they essentially want to go to repeatedly. It concerns me because he has such a high workload, much, much higher than when Nikola Jokic is also in the game, that I'd bet he's shooting 60% of the shots when he's the one in there, and he has to try and create offense when there's not great offense in there. Because there's such a high burden on Nikola and on Jamal Murray, it worries me if they're not fully healthy, if they get a cramp or something in a game, like in the playoffs, and you rely on them for such a huge amount. Is that going to throw off the entire team chemistry? Is that going to doom any prospects for success because they're reliant on those 2 players? However, one of the biggest things I hope is the fact that Strawther is shooting better than I thought he would this year. And currently, if he's able to contribute at shooting 40+% on open threes, I think that has a lot of potential for the Denver Nuggets if they can use that to create spacing as well, because he's shooting at a decent volume as well. And so while I wouldn't describe myself as overly optimistic over the Denver's opportunities this season, the fact they have Nikola Jokic, who I think is the single best player, and Jamal Murray, who I think is also a very, very good player in the NBA, it does give them opportunities that a lot of teams don't have. And so I wouldn't say I'm optimistic about their chances, but I will never discount Nikola Jokic, as they've done better so far this year than I expected them to do. And so I see potentially second round of the NBA playoffs would be my prediction as of right now. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe, and most importantly, have a blessed rest of your day.